Seated kids, you can head on back to the back. Going to be in Luke 22 this morning, Luke chapter 22. If you're visiting with us today, if this is your first Sunday with us, let me say welcome. You are jumping in here on what is the final 4 or 5 messages of what is 2 years worth of study in the book of Luke. So you're coming in right on kind of the crescendo as things are building right to the very end, and we are going at a breakneck pace. So you're going to see a couple of things this morning where you're probably going to be like, let's talk about that, and we're not going to talk about it. We're just going to kind of move on a little bit and keep going. But we're going to try our best to cover the big events and follow the story that Luke tells. For those of you that have been here, you know that I have tried my best to stick with Luke and not go to the other Gospels. I'm not trying to get the full picture of everything that is happening in this moment. I'm really just trying to zero in on the story that Luke is telling, because as we have seen over the last couple of years, he is a master storyteller. And so we're seeing how he kind of plays things off of each other, and how the way he does that should kind of draw our minds and our eyes and our hearts into a certain place. The series is Jesus for everyone, and the idea has been that Jesus is indeed for everybody. He's not just for the religious, he's not just for the rich, he's not just for the connected, he's not just for those that have power, he's not for all of those things. In fact, if he's anything, he's for everyone who's not those things. He is the one who seeks out the outcast and the one who's been deemed unclean, and the women who didn't have a place in society, welcomes them to be disciples. He's the one who has brought in and brought close everyone who otherwise has been completely shunned, from tax collectors to fishermen to women to lepers. Everyone comes in and he says, "Come and follow me." And last week we looked at 2 primary moments, and I bring this up because I really think that this is kind of like sermon B to like side B to side A last week, in the sense that it really is kind of carrying on the same message of what we saw. We saw 2 primary events last week. We saw Judas agree to betray Jesus and take the money from the religious leaders, and we saw Jesus institute the new covenant in taking the Last Supper and taking a Passover meal with his disciples. And so we have this stark contrast of Judas and Jesus, and how differently the 2 of those acted. And this morning, like I said, that theme is going to kind of carry forward, except this time it isn't Judas, it's all the disciples, and especially their fearless leader, Peter, that is going to be in the crosshairs. And so what we're going to do in order to kind of convey this passage, we're going to look at 3 primary scenes in the final moments here with Jesus before he is led to the cross. We're going to look at 3 primary scenes that stand out in Luke 22, and how, like, when you set them in relief to one another, like they stand out by themselves, but when you put them next to each other, it's kind of like when you see a diamond on a ring. You're like, ooh, that's pretty. But then when you put the diamond up against the black felt where they're trying to sell you the diamond, like it really pops at that point, right? Well, what we see here is how these stories are really going to pop as you put them together. Over the years, Emily and I have we've been married for 24 years, and to my surprise, something that has developed over the years is our kind of joint love for live performances. Now, we're not really much for concerts. We have some concerts that we like to go to, but for the most part, we don't do concerts. I just don't think we like to stand for that long. So like whenever it's time for a concert, we're just like the first question is this a sit-down or a stand-up concert? Because if it's a stand-up concert, we're probably out. But we do like live performances, like musicals and plays, and going to see people's talent on display for that kind of thing. And I want you to think about the chaos that would ensue if you were at a Broadway-style musical, right? You are there, and you have the lead character has come out on the stage. The lead character is about to deliver their big monologue, whether it's a play and they've got it all set to go, or whether they've got their big number that they are about to sing, the one that everybody paid the tickets to come and hear this person sing this song, right? They're the lead. They're the ones that have won the part. They're ready to go. And then out of nowhere, somebody from the ensemble comes in, like hip checks him, knocks him out of the way and says, no, this is my turn. The spotlight's here. I'm going to take the spotlight now, right? Now, the ensemble, in case you're not like a musical person, the ensemble are people that are meant to kind of fill out the rest of the stage. They sing the chorus parts along with everyone else. They're not, by definition, they are not meant to be the people in the spotlight. They are meant to be the people in the background. And so when someone that is meant to be in the background comes up and grabs the spotlight, you can imagine what would happen. If you were there at the show, you would probably be disappointed that you're not going to get to hear the star that you came to hear sing that song. You're going to be frustrated. There's going to be chaos. The performer that was supposed to sing that song, the star of the show, is going to be furious. They're going to be angry. They're going to be insulted that someone would come and bump them from their stage. That is, in a nutshell, kind of what happens in Luke 22. That's kind of what we're going to read this morning. Whenever the ensemble cast, maybe a supporting role, comes in and says, hang on, spotlight over here on me. I want you to pay attention to me. Forget this guy who's about to sing this grand song that's the whole reason that he's even here. I want you to pay attention to me. That's kind of what's going to happen here in Luke 22. That's how it's going to play out. It's not going to play out just once, but it's going to play out twice. We've already seen it play out once with Judas, and now we're going to see it play out two more times. And we're going to see the disciples who are remarkably oblivious to the situation that is playing out in front of them. In the midst of what is an embarrassing and an awkward scene, we also have these very crushing moments that are heart-wrenching just to read. I cannot even imagine being there on that day. But in the midst of all of that, the star of our show, if I can say that without being too irreverent or blasphemous here, the star of our show, Jesus, still shines through in the midst of all of that. So let's look in Luke 22 and just kind of see where the morning takes us here. Luke 22, verse 24. Then a dispute also arose among them about who should be considered the greatest. But he said to them, the kings of the Gentiles lord it over them, and those who have authority over them have themselves called benefactors. It is not to be like that among you. On the contrary, whoever is greatest among you should become like the youngest, and whoever leads like the one serving. For who is greater, the one at the table or the one serving? Isn't it the one at the table? But I am among you as the one who serves. You are those who stood by me in my trials. I bestow on you a kingdom just as my Father bestowed one on me, so that you may eat and drink at my table in my kingdom, and you will sit on thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. So this scene as a whole is almost absurd for us to read in light of what we had just read last week. If you just go back to the immediately preceding verses, you just go back to what is right in front of that, like how they get to this conversation on the basis of what had just happened is remarkable. Like I don't understand. This is one of those things, like I would like to kind of be a fly on the wall and just see, like, how did you guys get to this place this quick? Now, we don't know what prompts the conversation. My guess, of what prompts the conversation is that Jesus has just told them that as they have taken the Last Supper, and Jesus has says, "This is my body broken for you. This is my blood that is poured out for you. I establish this new covenant with you." My assumption is that most of that probably went right over the head of his disciples. Or if they got it, they only got pieces of it. They were kind of probably looking at each other like, what's he talking about? Like, I don't understand. What does he mean, like, body broken? It's like matzah. What are we doing? Like, I don't understand what's going on here. So I don't think they fully grasped all of it. But what they did kind of latch onto, it appears, on the basis of Luke's reading of this here, it appears that what they did latch onto is whenever Jesus says, "One of you 12 that's sitting here with me, one of you will betray me. One of you who dips in the same bowl with me, who shared this common cup with me, who has eaten with me, one of you will betray me." And so my assumption is that they have latched onto that, and that is what kind of prompts the conversation, and kind of led them to this kind of like comparing ministry scars and ministry trophies, kind of like, well, you know it's not me. Like, you know I'm not the betrayer. Like, I'm the one that went out, like we went out together. Like, me and James, we went out together. Like, I saw what he did. He saw what I did. He healed this woman, which was amazing. I've heard him preach and talk about Jesus and the gospel, and you know it wasn't me. I was even able to cast out some of the demons that James couldn't cast out, so I'm obviously better than he is, so you know it can't be me. And like, this is how the conversation goes, right? They're like comparing one another, and they're saying, well, you know, whenever I go out and speak, I get bigger crowds. So like I'm pulling more people into the kingdom. So you know it can't be me. And so they're going back and forth, and the way that they're doing it is they're kind of saying, well, look, you can tell that I'm good enough, I'm great enough that I can't be the one that is betraying. And so they're like doing this back and forth, and kind of just comparing each other. It's just full on comparison, and they're walking away saying, "I'm the greatest one here. I couldn't be the betrayer. Look at me. Look how much I love Jesus. Look at what I've done with him. Look at what I've endured for him. Look at what we had to do when we went out together. Look at my resume. I could not be the betrayer," as if our resume could actually prevent us from falling away from Jesus. As if what we've done in the past somehow guarantees what will happen in the future. It does not at all, but this seems to be what they're doing. They're arguing over who is the greatest. And I think the thing that strikes me the most is that they seem to be completely oblivious to what Jesus has just taught them. That was not an ordinary Passover meal that he had shared with them. He was talking about very hard, very difficult, very painful things. He was talking about how he would suffer. He was talking about how he would die. But what they latch on to is kind of this self-defense, self-righteous. It's not me, Jesus. I really love you. And you know that because I've shown you that I love you. I mean, he instituted a new covenant. Like, completely changed their whole system of how they viewed and approached God. And what they latched onto was like this self-defense of, can't be me. Like, that's all that they really cared about. They chose to focus on the betrayal and clearing their own names more than they did the gospel that was poured out. I want you to think about that. So last week we took the Lord's Supper. We had the elements that were sitting out here. We took the Lord's Supper. If you've been in church in any time, you've taken the Lord's Supper in a variety of different ways. You know, I have pictured this scene in my head so many times, and I've thought, man, that would be remarkable to be there, to witness that, to see that drama play out, to see Jesus like stand at the head of the table and to carry this out. I mean, you think about even like the painting of the Last Supper, which obviously is not anywhere close to what anything would have really looked at. But that's like such a famous painting. You just know so many people have imagined what it would be like to be there in that moment. And then to know that the disciples didn't latch on to anything that you would have latched on to, that at least like you're trying to latch on to in your own brain. Like what they latched on to was clearing their own name and defending themselves. It's just like, come on, guys. So many amazing things just happened right in front of you, and you completely missed that. You just missed all of that. What makes it even more remarkable is this is not the first time that they've had this conversation. You can go look at it all the way back in Luke 9. They were arguing about who was the greatest then. Even had one of their moms being like, hey, like make sure that you take care of my sons. Like mom was interjecting and getting involved in this stuff. So they've learned this lesson before. They've had these debates before, maybe prompted by something different, but they've had the debates before, and they apparently have learned nothing. So it just kind of takes you back whenever you hear that they are arguing about who is the greatest after what we have read and what we saw in the Last Supper. Maybe what is equally amazing is how Jesus responds to them. He's incredibly gracious to them in light of this. He uses the moment to teach them a lesson. This is likely, now we don't know because like John tells the story in a different way, this little argument is likely what prompts Jesus to get up and start washing their feet and to teach them this is what it means in order to serve. Like Luke seems to kind of encapsulate that in just a couple of verses and deliver the kind of like money teaching line that comes out of that. He doesn't talk about the foot washing, but this conversation probably prompts Jesus to get up and wash their feet. Like he's hearing them argue about who's the greatest, and he gets up from the table and starts washing their feet, just as an object lesson of how dense they are, that they do not get what is happening. And so Luke kind of gets to the main point, the summary point, and he says, don't lead like the Gentiles that lord over their people and then celebrate themselves as being like kind and generous people. So that's what it says, and then call themselves benefactors. So what he's saying is, don't be like the Gentiles who take positions of authority, tell people what to do, and then tell them, aren't I nice for telling you what to do? You should celebrate me for that. And so Jesus says, don't lead like that. Don't be that kind of person. Don't look to take the seat of honor. You know, you think that that's the best seat in the house, to be seated at the head of the table, to take the seat of honor. But I'm here to tell you that your rabbi, the one that you follow, the one that you call Lord, I'm not like the one at the head of the table. I'm more like the waiter who is serving you. The one you don't even know his name. The one that is just background noise to the rest of what is happening. That is more like what I am. I am here to serve, and you would do well to do likewise. He says, your time will come when you will rule alongside me over all the 12 tribes of Israel. But until then, until that happens, use your position, use your authority, use your influence to serve. Not to gobble up more power, but to serve others. Friends, this is what Christian leadership looks like. And don't let anyone tell you that that is weak and soft. That is the most Jesus-like thing that you can do, is to lead in a way that serves others to ensure that they flourish. It's the whole reason we have the bags sitting back there on the table, because we want to honor people who have served in this way. We want to honor people who have said, I will not use this position of influence that I have in order to exert power. I will instead use it to serve others within Providence Church and to care for them. This is how Jesus did it. And it's explicitly how he tells us to do it. So don't let anybody tell you that leadership is something else. This is what it looks like to lead. So that's scene one. A bunch of the ensemble cast arguing about who should stand in the spotlight and who should have had the lead role. Who should be at the right hand and who should be right there in front of everyone with all the power and all the influence. It's a whole group of people that forgot where they belonged in the story. It's a whole bunch of people that forgot where they had been cast. It's a whole bunch of people who thought the story was about them, when really it was about somebody else totally. Scene 2 comes quickly, and it's going to have an ending that I think is going to pull at our hearts just a little bit more. It's easy for us to kind of look at scene 1 and like dismiss these people like, golly, man, how do y'all miss this stuff? Y'all are fools. Scene 2 is going to pull at our hearts just a little bit more. It is a bit heavier. So let's look in verse 31. Simon, Simon, look out. Satan has asked to sift you like wheat, but I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail. And you, when you have turned back, strengthen your brothers. Lord, he told him, I'm ready to go with you to prison and to death. I tell you, Peter, he said, the rooster will not crow today until you deny three times that you know me. So Simon, Simon. That's our first hint that is of what is about to come. That's called foreshadowing. That is like, he doesn't call him Peter, Peter. He doesn't say the rock. That is his name. That's like a nickname that he's got, calling him Peter. That's not his real name. His real name is Simon. But Jesus calls him Peter because that means rock. And he says, Peter, you are going to be a rock. But here he says, Simon, Simon. Calls him something totally different. Now, Simon can mean like someone who listens or hear. More than likely, because of the way that Jesus is using this kind of play on words here, more than likely what Simon means here in this context is like a reed in the water. So think about like you're down at the creek and you see like a shoot of grass that's kind of coming out of the side of the creek, and it kind of just flows with the water and moves back and forth. It's very shaky. It's very kind of like wishy-washy. That's more likely the contrast that Jesus is trying to pull out. And so instead of calling him Peter, Peter here, instead of saying, hey, rock, hey, guy that is rock solid, he's saying, hey, shaky one. Hey, wishy-washy one. So like this probably gets Peter's attention, like, oh, wait, we're back to Simon again? Like what happened here? Like I'm doing just fine. What'd you call me that for? Like, I mean, maybe I shouldn't have been arguing about how great I am, but listen, we know I'm the leader. I'm fine. Like, I'm Simon. Like, I'm Peter. Like, what are you calling me? What are you calling me Simon for? But it's the indicator that Jesus has something to tell Simon, and to say, hey, this is not how things are going to go. It's kind of a good news, bad news type of situation that Jesus then shares with Peter. He says, Satan has demanded to sift him like wheat, to shake him and see what's left over after he has been shaken. I don't know about you, but I do not want to know that information. Like, can you not tell me that, Jesus? I would rather not know. Can we just go through this as we need to? I don't need to know kind of what is about to happen to me. Peter is probably like taken aback by this. And especially when Jesus says, look, Satan has asked to sift you like wheat, Peter's got to be thinking like, and you told him no, right? Like we're buds, like you're on my side. You told him no, you can't do that. But Jesus doesn't really even consider that, doesn't really even look at this situation in that way. Instead, what he says is, Peter, I have prayed for you. I have taken your cause before the Father, and I have interceded on your behalf. Not that you would not face the trial that Satan has planned for you, but that after you have been rocked by this trial, after you have been shaken by this trial, after everything that you know has been put to the test by this trial, you would find your footing again. And then when that happened, you would be able to turn back to your brothers and you would be able to say, all right, I get how this works now. Let's figure this out together. I'm in this with you. It's a remarkable prayer by Jesus. It assumes the suffering of Peter, but it also prays that his faith would be strong through all of it. Now we know of what's about to happen, that Peter's faith doesn't come through perfectly intact. And I wish I had time to go to John 21 with you right now. It's my favorite chapter in all of Scripture, but I do not have time to do that. I would thoroughly encourage you to spend your week in John 21. I have spent, I think, the last 15 years in John 21, and it has changed everything about me and my relationship with Jesus and how I follow God. I would encourage you to do that, but I don't have time to do that this morning, but I would encourage you to do that. So it assumes the suffering of Peter, and then it prays that his faith would be strong through it all. And I know this is a story about Peter, so I don't want to draw too many like sweeping conclusions from this, but I hope for many of you, if not all of you here this morning, this little part is an encouragement to you. Not that Satan might be looking to you saying that I would like to sift you like wheat, but that if the sifting comes, or as Jesus says, when the suffering comes, not if, but when the suffering comes and the trials hit, you know that Jesus is praying for you on your behalf and praying that your faith would not fail in the midst of all of these trials. That must be encouraging to us this morning. That Jesus would intercede on our behalf in the midst of the trials. I think my tendency is to think whenever I am going through something that I feel like is a test or a difficult situation, that Jesus is probably sitting back and thinking, all right, let's see how he responds. Let's see how he does. Let's see if he's any good. Let's see if he actually loves me. Let's see if he actually cares like he says he does. Let's see if he follows me or if he goes after the easy road. Let's see if he breaks under pressure. But Jesus is not sitting back and observing anything. Jesus is actively interceding before the Father on your behalf. That must be encouraging for us this morning, that he would do that on our behalf. So Jesus has this kind of ominous warning. Peter, things are about to go bad. You have no idea the storm that is coming. I've tried to warn you, but you don't understand what is about to happen. You don't understand what they're about to do to me. You don't understand how this is going to affect you, and you don't understand how it's going to affect all of the team here, but I do, and I'm still going to need you, Peter, after all of this goes down. And then Peter, a supporting actor in this drama, loses his place just a little bit and begins to think that he's actually the hero of the drama. Begins to think that he's actually the savior of the drama. He begins to think that he is actually the one that should be stepping in. And he says, I'm all in with you, Jesus. You got nothing to worry about with me. I'll die for you. I'll go to prison for you. I am your man. I am ready to suit up. I am ready to go to battle. I am ready to go to war. I am ready for my close-up. Bring it on. Let's go. Hero shot. Here we go. Like, this is where Peter is. And you can almost hear Jesus shaking his head. Peter, you are not ready for this. In fact, you're so not ready that you're not even going to make it to tomorrow morning before you fail in what you just said you would do. You talk big now. You say you're ready for your close-up. You're like turning to make sure that we get your good side. Man, you think that you are ready. But this story isn't even about you, Peter. And you think it's all about you. And he then tries to help him get a better understanding of where this story is headed. So he tells the disciples, he looks to them, kind of backs away from Peter a little bit, and he's like, listen, Peter, you think you've got this covered, but you're not even going to make it until your alarm clock goes off in the morning before you have betrayed, or you have denied me 3 times. And then verse 35, he looks and he starts talking to his disciples, and he says, he also said to them, when I sent you out without money, so this is what we looked at probably about a year ago at this point, whenever Jesus sent out the disciples to go out 2 by 2. He said, I sent you out without money, without a money bag, without a traveling bag or sandals. I sent you out with nothing. I said, just go. And then you'll find a place as you go. And he said, did you lack anything? And they said, not a thing. And then he said to them, but now whoever has a money bag should take it, and also a traveling bag. And whoever doesn't have a sword should sell his robe and buy one. For I tell you, what is written must be fulfilled in me. And he was counted among the lawless. Yes, what is written about me is coming to its fulfillment. Lord, they said, look, here are 2 swords. That is enough, he tells them. Now, that is a bit of like a cryptic passage that is thoroughly debated. Is Jesus literally talking about swords here? Is the talk of swords a kind of a cryptic, like spiritual metaphor that is going on here? I could probably be convinced either way. I think it probably is literal. I think he really is telling them, like, your life is about to get really hard. Your life is about to get really, really bad. Now, what we know, and we'll see here in just a minute, is that whenever they pull out those swords to go to fight on Jesus' behalf, Jesus is like, stop it. Like, that's not what the swords are for. If my kingdom were of this world, I would tell you to fight like this. And he's like, don't do that. So this is not like an all-out, get your sword and here we go. But Jesus is trying to make the point here. He drives home the point that this great drama that they have been a part of for the last 3 years is about to have some very serious plot twists. Plot twists that he's told them are coming, but they have totally missed it. They have not understood at all. He says betrayal is coming. Suffering is coming. And he says, remember I told you to go out and take all that stuff and you would be fine? Well, now, or not to take anything and you'd be fine? Well, now I'm telling you, you might want to pack some money. You might want to pack an extra change of clothes or 2, and you might want to bring a sword with you, because that's the level of how bad things are about to get. You're going to need to take care of yourself out here. So the disciples look around, they find a couple of swords, and he shrugs. He's like, whatever, that's fine for now. And then the story just kind of keeps moving on. Luke doesn't give us much more commentary than that. Verse 39, he went out and he made his way as usual to the Mount of Olives, and the disciples followed him. And when he reached the place, he told them, pray that you may not fall into temptation. Then he withdrew from them about a stone's throw, knelt down and began to pray. Father, if you are willing, take this cup away from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. Then an angel from heaven appeared to him, strengthening him. Being in anguish, he prayed more fervently, and his sweat became like drops of blood falling to the ground. Now, this scene is striking in Luke's gospel. It's very brief. It's just a few verses here. It's not nearly as detailed as it is when Matthew or John talk about this. It's not nearly as long-winded. It doesn't give us all the details of what happens here, but it is striking. Clearly, this is the famous scene from Gethsemane as Jesus prays at an intensity that most of us will never know in this lifetime. Jesus' frail humanity is on full display here. The kind of intersection of Jesus as man and Jesus as God, 100% man, 100% God, like the paradox that is kind of butting up against each other here in this moment. And he knows what he is about to suffer, and he is in anguish over it. His body reaches the breaking point just from the stress alone, where it can no longer function as it should. He begins to sweat drops of blood, and his physical state begins to match the intensity of his emotional state. The seriousness and the earnestness of Jesus is striking when you consider what we've just read so far this morning. The picture of the disciples and Peter just moments before. Jesus is focused with a profound intensity of what lays just before him. The disciples here talk of betrayal. They hear Jesus talk about betrayal, and their immediate response is to start debating about who is better. Not to weep, not to fall down in prayer, not to match this level of intensity. Their immediate response is to talk about who's better and how it couldn't be them. Peter hears about suffering and boldly proclaims, it won't be a problem for him. He's good to go. You can count on me, Jesus. There's a lightheartedness. There's an arrogance. There's kind of this just clear, like they're in a different place here. Like their minds are not anywhere near the same place that Jesus is. Like you contrast that with how Jesus is acting here, and there's nothing light about this moment at all with Jesus. He is resolute. He wants the cup to be taken from him because he knows the anguish that is there. But ultimately what he wants is to accomplish the Father's will, and he submits himself to the Father. Jesus is humanity and humility on full display. The one that is actually the main character of the story doesn't demand that the story to be written to make things easier for him. He doesn't say, hey, hang on, Father, like I know you sent me, but you and I are one. We can rewrite this story. We're the author of history. We can rewrite how this is going. Let's take this in a different direction. I know this is the plan. Let's go in a different way. He doesn't say that. He says, Father, if you want to go in a different way, I would love it. I don't want to face what is before me, but I will do what it is that you have called me to do. He accepts the story that has been written, and he is ready to carry it out. And while Jesus is doing this, no doubt the disciples are beginning to understand the depth of Jesus' final moments. And as they observe him and the weight that he is carrying and the drops of blood that are spilling to the ground, no doubt the disciples are starting to shift their mindset, and they're beginning to think, yes, oh my goodness, we have missed it. Man, this is heavy. Jesus, we are here for you, right? That's how they're acting, right? Well, let's see. Verse 45. When he got up from prayer and came to the disciples, he found them sleeping, exhausted from their grief. Why are you sleeping? He asked them. Get up and pray so that you don't fall into temptation. They were asleep. These men that just hours before were arguing about their greatness and promising to go to the end with Jesus had fallen asleep. They like to think of themselves as revolutionaries. They like to think of themselves as soldiers. They like to think of themselves as warriors. They like to think of themselves as the main characters riding in on the horse, ready to set Rome right. They can't even stay awake to keep watch with their king. They were no revolutionaries. They were tired and distracted, and they forgot who the main character of the story was. Now we come to the final scenes for us to look at this morning. They're kind of two scenes in one, but I'm gonna read this whole thing, several verses here. I'm gonna read through this all the way down from 47 through 62, and just let the weight of what is happening here kind of fall on your shoulders as we read through this. While he was still speaking, suddenly a mob came, and one of the 12, named Judas, was leading them. He came near Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus said to him, Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss? Are you taking the sign of friendship and using that for betrayal? When those around him saw what was going to happen, they asked, Lord, should we strike with a sword? Then one of them struck the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. But Jesus responded, no more of this. And touching his ear, he healed him. Jesus said to the chief priests, temple police, and the elders who came out for him, have you come out with swords and clubs as if I were a criminal? Every day while I was with you in the temple, you never laid a hand on me. But this is your hour and the dominion of darkness. What are you coming out here to get me for? You could have arrested me any day you wanted to in the temple. Of course, we know that. We know the reason why. It's because that would have put too much pressure on the Pharisees. They needed this to happen at night because they did not want this to get out to all the people that were in town for the Passover. Verse 54, they seized him, led him away, and brought him into the high priest's house. Meanwhile, Peter was following at a distance. And they lit a fire in the middle of the courtyard and sat down together, and Peter sat among them. And when a servant saw him sitting in the light and looked closely at him, she said, this man was with him too. But he denied it. Woman, I do not know him. After a little while, someone else saw him and said, you're one of them too. Man, I am not, Peter said. About an hour later, another kept insisting, this man was certainly with him. Since he is also a Galilean. But Peter said, man, I don't know what you're talking about. And immediately, while he was still speaking, a rooster crowed. And the Lord turned and looked at Peter like, whew, that's a hard sentence just for me to read. The Lord turned and looked at Peter. And Peter remembered the word of the Lord and how he said to him, before the rooster crows today, you will deny me 3 times. And he went outside and he wept bitterly. It would be hard to find 2 more scenes, 2 more stories here, more at odds with the one that immediately preceded it. The prayer of Jesus, the drops of blood, the anguish that he felt, followed by the betrayal of one of his disciples and the denial of, by all accounts, if not his closest friend, one of his 2 closest friends here on earth. Jesus is praying to the Father, overwhelmed by grief and stress. The disciples were asleep, followed by betrayal, followed by denial. 2 men that completely forgot their place in the story. That one way or another thought they were able to kind of interject themselves. Judas thinking that maybe he could cover his own rear end. He needed to make sure he was taken care of because after all, he's the main character in his own story. Peter, who thought he was ready for his hero shot, he was ready for his close-up, and now realizing he was nothing what he thought he was. Completely forgot the story and where they belonged in it. A group of disciples that argued over who was the greatest among them. Like, it's just like story after story of all these people who just, man, they are so far removed from where Jesus actually is. And you have this Savior that was faithful, even in anguish, even alone. And this is the Jesus that we worship. This is the Jesus that we follow. Well, I'd love to sit up here and I would love to kind of talk smack about these guys. I'd love to sit up here and I would love to talk about these men as an unfaithful, embarrassing excuse for a disciple. I am well aware that part of the reason that we understand so well what happens with Judas and Peter is because we understand Judas and Peter. I'm all too familiar with what it's like to wake up and for my thoughts to center around me, my needs, my comfort, my ego, my glory, my story. We all think of ourselves. I think it is the default way that we are born. We all think of ourselves as the main character of our story. Now, depending on the life that you've lived, the life that you've been given, and your own kind of makeup, you may think of yourself as the hero of your own story. Or you may think of yourself and your story as a tragedy, and you are the main character left to die at the end of the story. I don't know how you view it, but we all tend to think, we are all born with the default mindset that we are at the center of the story, and the story is about us. Following Jesus means that we must step back and realize that we are actually part of a grand story. And we are not at the center of it. We find ourselves in a great drama. And it's there that we can move into our appropriate roles. We can move into the right places that God has designed for us. Our lives, our world, our hope self-destructs when you place yourself at the center of the story. For so many people, we are told today that the best way to order your life is whenever you forget about everyone else, just love yourself and put yourself at the center of your story and then let the chips fall where they may. What the Bible teaches us is that you are not the center of the story. Jesus is the center of the story, and we order our lives around that figure. And that's how things line up correctly. I wonder where you identify in this scene. I wonder if it's the disciples arguing about who is the greatest. I wonder if it's the disciples that have fallen asleep and can't seem to maintain their focus, don't match the intensity, and don't understand really what is going on in the world. Or I wonder if it's Peter and you felt the pain and the grief and the sorrow and the conviction as you've locked eyes with Jesus and you've heard that rooster crow and you've realized, oh no, I've done it again. Judas completed his betrayal and nothing intervened. For Peter, he was gracious. It was gracious to have that rooster make that sound, to kind of grab hold of him and say, "What are you doing, Peter? This is what Jesus said would happen, and now here you are." Jesus was gracious enough to set kind of an internal alarm clock for Peter to wake him up, to say, "Wake, O sleeper, in 12 hours you have totally forgotten the conversation we just had. You were ready to ride into battle, you were ready to die for me, and in just a few hours you couldn't even admit that you knew who I was." And while the scene is heartbreaking, the conviction and the grief is terrible, the weeping is awful, Jesus in chains, bleeding and arrested, locking eyes as the rooster crows. While it may be heart-wrenching and Peter may run off, it is also a beautiful moment of grace. Because we are a forgetful people, just like Peter. The disciples were once again arguing about their greatness, forgetting the lessons of the last few years with Jesus, the lesson learned as they ate the meal just before this and listened to Jesus talk about being poured out for them. Peter, in just one evening, seems to have completely forgotten about the whole exchange with Jesus about the rooster until he hears the rooster. We all need reminders of the gospel in our lives because we are a forgetful people. We need those things like that rooster to pull us from our slumber, to wake us up to our reality, because the tendency is for us to go into autopilot and just forget what is going on around us, or to sleep at the base of the tree while Jesus is weeping on the side. Perhaps this morning is even one of those moments for you. Maybe you've felt one of those moments on a Sunday, or as you read through the Bible, or as you heard a song on the radio, or maybe even as you just sat in your car and the Spirit has pricked your heart. The question is, what do you do whenever you have one of those moments? What now? How do you respond? Do you weep bitterly like Peter? Maybe. I think that's probably appropriate. Do you, like Peter did when Jesus told him that he would deny him, do you make grand promises of martyrdom and devotion? I think we all kind of do that at some point. Like you feel bad about something. You're like, "Jesus, I will never do this again. I've got this right now. I'm resolved. I'm not going to commit this sin again. I'm not going to do this again. I am all in for you." It's not the worst response, but I think we also all know that rarely holds. The answer is to remember who the main character is in the story. That is Jesus. To remember who is faithful in this story. It's Jesus. To remember that he is the one that drank the cup, that took the wrath for your sin, that in spite of betrayal, in spite of denial, in spite of falling asleep and being distracted in his hour of need, he never flinched from what Paul calls the joy set before him. This is the gospel, friends. This is the Jesus that we worship. Not that we would perform greatly in our story, but that we would worship him rightly in his story. That we would know grace. That we would honor Jesus as the only one worthy to be at the center of any story, especially our own. Let's pray. Father, it's our confession this morning that far too often we think we are the star of the show. That all of life, all of this world, all of our friends, all the people we know, all the way that things play out in life, that all of it should be ordered around us. that all of it should be based on who we are and what we need and what we do, that we are the center of the show. Father, it's our confession that this is us. Father, I pray that you would convict us, that the rooster would crow in our ears even as we are praying right now. And that we would know that we have failed and we have faltered, but that you have interceded on our behalf. That you have provided a way for us on the cross. That you have drank that cup of wrath. And that in you we can find wholeness and goodness. And that call remains on us to worship you. Father, help us to live life in light of that. It's in Christ's name we pray. Amen.